I always love providing photographers with tools that allow them to completely change their workflow. Now, when it comes to black and white conversions, people always have a hard time with it because there's so many different ways that you can go. And if you are already familiar with Infinite Color Panel, then you know that Infinite Black and White Panel has the same concept. For those of you who are not, Infinite Black and White Panel is a tool that allows you to have complete customization over your black and white conversions. It first gives you unlimited options into the conversions that it applies to your images, and then you can have complete control in what it offers you so you can get the exact look you're going for. Here's an example of all the images that a lot of our beta testers have played with and come up with using the Infinite Black and White Panel. It works on every single genre from landscape, portraits, pets, and I made sure it does because it was really important to me that working photographers could use this in their workflow, and it was something that was considered a very serious tool by many people that I respect in the industry. So let's get started and showing you exactly how it works. Here we have an image that is incredible by Stormy Sloane, who is one of my favorite boudoir photographers, and she provided this image to us as an example of how to use it. Once you have Infinite Black and White Panel loaded, the first basis that we want to talk about is a Create button. Once you click on the Create button, what happens is it generates a group of layers, and every time you hit Create, it basically continues the further process of generating a randomized set of colors and converts it to a black and white adjustment layer. So you can see here in our folder, we have these 4 layers, and every time we hit Create, it comes up with a completely new look. So you may be asking yourself, how does this exactly work? And how can I control this? The answer is actually pretty simple. The way this works is, if I turn off this black and white adjustment layer here for a second, and if I go and turn off the black and white option here, now that I hit Shuffle or Create, you'll notice that it comes up with a beautiful or unique color grade depending on what it does. And every time you hit Create, it comes up with something that sometimes might be favorable, might be not, but I purposely and intentionally pushed it to colors that you normally wouldn't use in a color image, because what it does is, when I now combine this with a black and white adjustment layer, it renders a black and white look that is completely unique, because the black and white adjustment layer basically reads the color information below it and converts that to black and white. And when you combine the two together, you get a really magical formula of unique black and white conversions that you normally would have a really hard time doing manually, because let's face it, every time you try to do something manually, it takes some time to do. But what if you could create an unlimited amount of options for you to then decide what you like, customize, and save? And that's the point of Infinite Black and White Panel. Now that you see how it works, let's say that you want to customize something, or you want to save something, or whatever it is. Let me show you some of the other options here we have in our Infinite Black and White Panel. At the bottom here, we have options for grain, fade, and contrast. We also have intensity such as light, medium, and intense. Personally speaking, I always prefer using intense for the black and white panel, because when you click on light and use it, the differences are very subtle, which is very appropriate for different intentions. But when you click on intense, it creates a completely drastic and unique look every single time. And then when you stop on something you like this, you can then go into each of these different areas and modify them as you choose to. For instance, over here we have a curve set on top. And the reason for that is then you can individually change the curve. It adds 3 points. You can modify your shadows, midtones, and highlights. So if you feel like, you know what, I want to increase the highlights a little bit, let's go ahead and push that over here. And you know what, let's increase the midtones a little bit as well. So I can do that as well. But the reason I have another option called regions is because with curves by itself, what happens when you decrease the midtones too much, sometimes it also interferes how the shadows and the highlights look, because it adds more contrast. I can go on top here, click on my Infinite Black and White folder, click on regions, and it sets up 3 different layers for me, each midtones and shadows and highlights. And let's say I want to increase or decrease my shadows. I can click on shadows here. Now, if I bring this up or bring this down, it's only going to change the shadow information without touching the midtones and highlights. Obviously, this is going to change based on the image. However, you can go into each of these and play with it and see which region is being affected. And more than likely, it's going to affect the region that you think it is. So this is why this works so well. And I'm really happy about this personally, because this is something that I've wanted for a very long time. And having this level of control combined with a randomizer like this is really powerful. The other great thing is, let's say that you want to click on, say, selective color. Let's say you want to randomize just this layer. We have a shuffle button here located next to each individual layer. So if you want to shuffle just one of the layers, you can. So let's say I like this, then I want to shuffle the curves, I can. But maybe you don't want to shuffle the curves too intensely. I can change it to light and then click on the curves. And then it does so very gently. You can see the change happening here on light is very minimal. So when I click on intense and shuffle the curves again, it's much more intense. And the way we designed this was actually quite clever, because we went through a lot of images and we made sure that the parameters of each of these layers were something that was favorable to each image, no matter what the image used. So basically, I wanted to make sure that every time you get a black-white conversion, it's favorable to at least somebody, and it's not off the wall, because these settings can get really, really intense and pretty disgusting sometimes. Like, look at this. This is not really nice. This is too bright. So we wanted to create a formula in how these layers interact with each other. And that's how I created the Infinite Black and White panel, which was developed by Connie Wallstrom, who's an amazing coder and programmer, to bring this to life. Now let's take a look at another image provided by Mayhew. Let's say that I use the create button and I come up with something that I like, and I honestly like that a lot. So that's great. And I want to add more artificial, or I should say not artificial, I should say realistic grain. And when you look at grain on any black and white film image, what you'll notice is that there's inconsistencies in the grain. Once I clicked on grain here, you'll see that it adds a grain layer, and it has few other options. Let's talk about them. As I mentioned before, grain typically changes on film images in a way that is specifically different in your shadows and highlights. For example, shadow grain is always much more intense than the grain in the midtones or the highlights. And so what we've done here is we've coded this in a way where the grain itself feathers off in the midtones and in the highlights, so it's less intense. The other thing that's great about this is, in case you want more grain, you simply click on Add Noise here and adjust the grain amount like so. And so you get that exact amount that you want based on your personal preference if you want some grain. Another thing is, let's say you want to quickly fade the results that you've gotten. If I click on fade, it's going to fade out the image even further. This can also work on color images. So in case you want to hide all the other layers and just apply a fade, you can do so. And I can quickly add more if I want to, but I'm not. Okay, the next great part, I'm going to delete that really quick. I'm going to add my grain back and add my black-white conversion back. I'm going to add some contrast. And so contrast basically amplifies the contrast profile of the image. And it does so in a different way than adding contrast by a slider. It basically remaps kind of the image, and it figures out where the shadows are and the highlights are. And then it amplifies the highlights, the shadows and midtones specifically. So it's really nice. I think the look is really great. I use this quite a bit as well. Basically a black and white layer set to a soft light blend mode at different opacities, and you can change everything. So that's basically it. We've went over our different intensities. We went over regions and how we can use that to completely control each specific region of midtones, highlights, and shadows. We went over each individual option here in terms of how they can be turned on and off. We talked about shuffling in case we want to shuffle a specific layer. And also we went over grain, fade, and contrast. I believe with these options here, you should be able to create the black and white image of your choosing and have the customization and flexibility that you want. Now you can even save this group here and use it over and over again as your own preset. To do so, simply go to infinitecolorpanel.com/education, where there's videos and documentation about how to do that in a couple of different ways. And also, if you're new to Infinite Color or Infinite Black and White, simply go to Infinite Color Panel, check it out. I think you're going to love it, as well as our Facebook group, Infinite Color Panel, to see tons of people who are using the Infinite Color Panel as well as the now Infinite Black and White panel. And if you want to see even more work from people, go to our Instagram account at Infinite Color Panel, and you can see pretty much a lot of images that we feature on a regular basis because we love featuring our community. If you want to submit one, simply go to our Facebook group or Instagram and tag us, and we love to hear from you. So join our community, be involved, and we're constantly looking forward to seeing what professionals create with our tools.